don't get farm bill fatigue. Don't think that this is just going to happen eventually. We got people that can't wait on eventually. So even if you're not in that situation, use your voice for somebody else and engage strong now, because it's time to go.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Louisiana Farm Bureau podcast. Today I'm joined by Andy Brown, Director of Commodity and Public Policy.
That's right.
Did I nail that?
Yeah.
Nailed it.
First time ever.
Nailed it.
100th pod with you, and you finally got it.
Well, the title has changed, so I guess let's start with congratulations.
Hey, thanks.
Brian Bro is retired, and we'll announce it later in another podcast, but we just filled the department up.
Yeah.
So congratulations on that. I know you're excited to get back to the business of the Farm Bureau, and that's actually what we're going to talk about today. We're talking about Farm Bill, and as National Affairs Coordinator, that's one of your big wheelhouses.
Yep.
That's been I feel like that's something we've been talking about for a couple of years now. It's been on our radar. It's been coming, and it's been moving slow, it feels like, especially with the way national politics are these days. Give us an update. I know you have the crystal ball in your office that you checked on right before you came over here. Where are we at with the Farm Bill?
We are at sort of a stalemate right now. We have been for quite a while, but time is of the essence. We extended a Farm Bill in 2023 for a year, and that expires at the end of September of 24, so the month we find ourselves entering into. And we have 13 congressional days between now and expiration to get something done before that very, very important bill defaults. So we need Congress to make up their mind. They have quite a robust package of appropriations work to do between now and the end of September that unfortunately didn't get done before they went home to campaign during August. So it's just a lot stacked up in the pipeline to get through.
Let's talk about, just for me who does not, I'm not neck deep in national politics all the time, though it seems like we all are sometimes. But with the Farm Bill, you talk about it defaulting essentially at the end of September. What does that mean? Like we had an extension for a year. What does it mean for it to expire in September? And is it even a reality to get it done between now and the end of September, to get a new Farm Bill passed between now and then?
Well, it would be monumental for Congress to allow one to actually default. They have too much that's going to have to move between now and the end of the month to think that they would just let it completely die on the vine. But a simple extension at this point, in terms of farmers' sake, is about the same difference. I mean, we have a completely ineffective safety net. We have a lot of programs that are backlogged with all this indecision. There's other things that help people every day, like nutrition programs. There's conservation programs that have continued to be implemented. But so those things, if we just get another extension, that helps a lot of people. But for us as the Farm Bureau, none of those safety net programs have worked at all this year. They didn't work last year. They didn't work the year before. They've become essentially useless with the numbers that are behind them. So that's why we're pushing very, very hard to get a Farm Bill done. We were last year, and we let them off the hook, and now we're at a breaking point where something's got to give, or the farm economy's looking at some really tough decisions.
Farm economy across the board just generally is not great right now. Like inflation has inputs really high. Maybe not quite as high as we saw them at their peak, maybe with fertilizer costs. I don't know, I might be wrong, but they're still high. I think it's safe to say, especially relative to some prices that they're seeing. Before we get too deep, background, Farm Bill comes every about 4 or 5 years. Every 5 years. The last Farm Bill that we're working from that just got extended was from 2018. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Man, I'm great with this history. But 2018 farm economy, 2024 farm economy, very, very different inputs wise, just the way the crop seasons have been. But you'd mentioned safety nets. Have we been putting Band-Aids on that? I mean, that's what we've been doing, I feel like, with all of our disaster talks with crawfish or you name the commodity. But those are all just Band-Aids or little, carve-outs that we're finding here and there? Is that how that's been working?
Yeah, so a farm bill is supposed to be the all-encompassing package for agriculture. It's how it was designed, that rather than, Congress said years ago, rather than have to deal with you pesky farmers and your issues every year, let's just package in a 5-year bill that gives you a lot of the things you need. And farmers are pretty good about, finding those needs and taking a deal and working conservatively to meet those needs. And so they packaged them all up decades ago in a farm bill. Where that you come fast forward to the last couple of bills, I'd tell you it was even before 2018 in the 14 bill. Prices were good when we wrote those two farm bills. I say we. I was loosely a part of both of those, but prices were up. So we didn't focus as much on, or we didn't have the leeway politically to focus on farm safety net programs because, well, we didn't really need them at the time. So we focused on things like conservation programs.
Base acreage was a lot of stuff.
Yeah, little tweaks here and there to how they worked and how they were implemented, actively engaged, who gets to participate in them. Just basic or small little in the weeds tweaks. But wholesale, how we assure our food security of this country kind of discussions weren't really on the table. We were innovating and try to build on what was going well. And there were plenty of ideas at that time, but the focus to get the votes shifted towards things like nutrition, shifted to other priorities than just the farm part of the farm bill. So that leads us to today where things are drastically different. We just have seen announcements about some of the worst trade deficits that agriculture's ever experienced, record-setting. And so when you don't have international markets for a lot of our crops, you have bad prices, market prices that they receive for their goods. And so that's one issue on top of some of the things you already mentioned. So we have super high cost, very low prices, and a lot of challenges in between, and that has led a lot of folks into a bad financial position as a business.
Well, and what's, I guess, extra about the time we're in now? Well, I guess what's it's a compounding issue because of the way that 2022 hit farmers. I'm thinking row crop farmers like my family up in Northeast Louisiana.
Yep.
2022 was brutal for soybean farmers. A lot of soybean farmers. 23 was lower prices, a little bit lower yields. So they've had multiple years now of these problems. It's not like, every now and then you have a great crop or you get a really good price that an average crop you can kind of refill the tanks a little bit. That's just not been the case these last few years, right?
Yeah, there's a saying, you can't out yield bad prices. You have to have markets to sell anything. You can manage costs if you have lower yields. You have more inputs, you expect to get more return. When you have bad prices, and farmers are price takers, they don't set their price, so they can't move that needle. That's a tough situation. And this is where it gets into some of what's holding up the farm bill. You're hearing a lot of rhetoric, particularly, unfortunately, out of what should be one of the four corners, one of our champions for agriculture. The chairwoman in Senate Ag Committee, Ms. Stabenow, has tried to divide agriculture and thinks that this is a regional farm bill. The one that we do have a bill in the House of Representatives passed out of the House Ag Committee that was bipartisan. Both sides of the aisle, not wholesale, but we did get both sides of the aisle to support that bill, and it meets a lot of our needs. Rather than put out a bill and get to the negotiating table, the chairwoman has chosen to try to divide agriculture by saying that bill is a Southern agriculture-minded bill, and she has other priorities and farmers across the rest of the country say they need a different deal. We hadn't found those farmers. We're in a nationwide organization that's pretty high on Chairman Thompson's bill. But the other side of that is Southern agriculture has faced things and has always had pieces of the Farm Bill that work better for them than other parts of the country, just like those other parts of the country have pieces that work better in their world. That's why it's a large bill that has a lot of different benefits for a lot of different people.
Right.
Our Title I price support and yield support, but our farm safety net programs, ARC and PLC, were designed by a lot of Southern commodities. They work well for what we do. We can usually yield pretty well, but we have other issues like prices, like quality, like basis. Like we have other things that change our return at the end of the day. Crop insurance works really well in the Midwest, so they have that title of the Farm Bill, and we both benefit from each other's. But anyway, the House versions improves all of those. It improves nutrition. It improves, you go through all the titles. It has improvements to all of them. It's really what we believe is politics that are keeping that negotiation from happening. So we got to cut through that, and we're going to advocate for our members to do that. And we're to the point now where we're not going to, you want to help your friends and you want to try to play as nice as you can, but it's time to take the gloves off, and it's time to raise voices loud and proud, respectfully, but we're going to advocate like Farm Bureau is known to do.
Well, I was about to ask you how. I know we've for a long time. We've obviously will advocate for, what our farmers in Louisiana and across the nation are wanting in a farm bill. But how has, I guess, our messaging to Congress been shifting over the last weeks and months? I mean, as we're now to that point where it's like, hey, it's now where farmers are going to go out of business. How is that shifting now?
Yeah, anything that you want to advocate for, you want to tell a good story. You want to sell it or propose it as like, look at all these great investments we can make in our country. Look at research, what a farm bill could do. We need to add to research. What about conservation programs? We can protect the environment, and we can build on the legacy of sustainability that farmers have. Those are where we were at last year, those kind of narratives. Mm-hmm. And then, and by the way, we need we need to shore up some of these farm safety net things to sustain all of those other good things that we do. All of those things are still in there, and we worked really hard to make them, those positive things good. But where it's shifted is it's not butterflies and rainbows anymore.
That's not the lead story anymore.
There's no unicorn flying across the screen. Like, this is down and dirty. We got to get something done in the name of food security as national security. That's why this bill has food security and national security in its title, because we're to the point now where if we really still believe as a country that we want to grow our own food, we want to grow our own fiber, we want to grow our own fuel, these investments that we've made for so long in having agriculture as a backbone, not to get, into some Will Ferrell movie here, but if it's going to be the backbone of our economy in rural America, we got to invest in it. And so we're to that breaking point for a lot of rural communities that they got a lot of farmers with a lot of debt that has been punted on the backs of these farmers for 3 or 4 years now, and it's time to stand up for those folks.
Yeah, and I mean, I said it a minute ago, but there are going to be farmers going out of business. If there probably already have been farmers going out of business. You mentioned a minute ago a pretty devastating story, but they're not rare to find. It's not hard to find those stories anymore because of the economy we're in, the debt load, honestly, probably just the stress of it. Even if the bank is not putting them out of business, the farmer might be like, look, no more. Like, I can't keep doing this.
Yeah, and we all, I like to try to, for maybe the consumer or just somebody loosely tied to agriculture, somebody like me and you that gets a salary and gets a check twice a month, this is different for these folks. And why we say it's an investment in national security is they have unique challenges that no other businesses faces. They don't get to set their price, and that's part of this whole system is we want to compete on the international scale that benefits our overall U.S. economy to have that as a trading tool. So if we're going to go under that system, then we got to have protections in place for those people. We went away, and farmers were patriots in a way to agree to do away with direct payments and true subsidies, and went to these kind of price support programs, these safety net minded, where they don't pay out every year. They don't pay out most years. This is just a floor. This is something to land on so that we can sustain that rural economy that is the engine for our country.
Mm-hmm.
And that's we check the dipstick. There's no more oil. We're running out of gas. Things are banging and clanging. Like we gotta do some maintenance here if we're gonna keep it going. And unfortunately, we just don't have the political will to do it right now. There's just priorities on other things that shouldn't matter as much as this matters.
Well, I was back home yesterday shooting a corn harvest story as everybody's wrapping up that way, and the farmer I visited with has had 3 tough years, and I went and visited with a gentleman in an elevator who is buying that grain from the field, and he's like, and he reminded me, which I've done enough stories from these types of communities where it's not just that farmer's income. It's that farmer, it's all of his employees, it's that elevator, all of its employees, it's the bank, it's the car dealership, it's the grocery store, it's that local tax revenue, that tax base of that community. It is that community. These farmers are central to that rural economy, and it's just hard to fathom the idea of some of those guys going out of business because that is so central to those economies. But one thing also that Mr. Bowe mentioned to me, and we've talked about it right now, is these bankers want to help these farmers, but they're running out of, I don't want to say the will, but the ability to say, look, I can't keep giving a loan to this. And that's where that safety net comes in. That's where this farm bill comes in to give that bank some backing to say, okay, I can keep betting on Andy Brown to grow a crop because I know that these rules are in place to support that.
Yeah, it's no different than any other kind of banking. If you've ever gone in to get a loan, it's just economies of scale. If you've gone in to get a home loan or for a truck or, to go buy a boat or whatever, that banker's going to look at debt to income ratio. They're going to look at your earning potential, what assets you have, and all of that hopefully means you have some equity that you have. They can lend you a line of credit based off of your worth versus what you're asking to borrow. And because of all these different struggles, farmers have eaten into that equity, and then now they've eaten into those assets, and now they've exhausted all those different options that a banker can look at, and eventually that banker, it's a business, has to say, no, Carl, you can't go plant a crop this year because you don't have the financial means to do it. And then, as you stated very well, they then have to turn around to a bunch of other businesses that won't have their income that comes off of what farmers do in those communities to continue to sustain it. And the reality is that nobody else is coming to those communities. That people can flash up things all over, other energy production or other warehouse, this or that's going to come, but that doesn't have the longevity that somebody that's tied to that land and has invested in it for centuries.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to where we're headed. You talked about kind of how the gloves are coming off. Advocacy is happening. Farm Bureau is going to step up in this gap, I guess, and help really get this message out. What is next, I guess, for the Farm Bureau member, for Louisiana Farm Bureau, for American Farm Bureau? What's coming, I guess? How would you kind of prep the troops, I guess?
Yeah, and I think even myself, I think a lot of us have taken our successes and advocacy for granted. I think we just expected that, okay, we'll take an extension, but y'all find a way, and our lobbying groups will find a way, and we'll have our priorities met, and eventually we won't get everything we want, but we'll get a good farm bill done. And I haven't done a bunch of these, but I can just tell you it's just different. We got a lot of people that do what I do that are frustrated because we're not getting the same response that we've gotten in the past. And some of that reality is because we don't have as much votes in rural America as we once did. And we don't, a lot of these votes are counted in urban centers that don't understand agriculture. So now's the time to, you exercise to be ready for, you practice all week for the game on the weekend kind of thing. And we practice. We have great organizational efforts, and we stay loosely engaged. We listen to podcasts. We look at social media. We do all these things to kind of keep in the loop. But now is the time where we as an organization have to really come together and step up and do something for our fellow man. Because, this is all doom and gloom, but there are some folks out there who've already benefited from some help. We've had really good cattle prices. Now they have plenty of challenges. We've got a sugar program that, as long as a farm bill gets extended, will help those folks. So maybe they're not in as bad a shape as some other crops, but that's why we're the Farm Bureau family, because when one of our brothers or sisters is in a bind, like crawfish has been, like rice was, like livestock was with the drought, then those other folks have stepped up. So now we got to rally that once again, and we got to do it at an effort that is probably more robust than we've seen in quite a while. So it's going to be voter voice. It's going to be town hall meetings. It's going to be, parish events. It's going to be emails to your congressman or phone calls to their office, even if it's just that intern answering, say, hey, Mr. Brown, I've written down that you're a farmer and you want to tell Mr. So-and-so, Mr. Johnson, Mr. Higgins, Mr. Scalise, Mr. Carter, Miss Letlow, Mr. Graves, Mr. Kennedy. So Cassidy.
Go ahead and name them all.
I was almost there. Call those offices. Leave a brief message. Pass a farm bill now. That alone will speak volumes. We got to do all those little things and leave no stone unturned. The time is now.
With a lame duck session coming for a president and for potentially some of these congressional offices, is this a reality? To get one passed between now and Christmas, to get one extended? I know you said that it would be crazy for it to not get extended, but what's that possibility like? I know it's impossible to tell really for you, probably.
Yeah, I mean, there will be a continuing resolution to keep the government funded, and we can attach a extension onto that. And we'll eventually get into the 119th Congress with a few changes here and there, and hopefully we'll get it done. But I don't want to focus on the odds here, because this is one of those, if you're going into battle and you're counting men, we're an outnumbered group every time we go to DC. We're less than 2% of the population. And we've done too much of that. It's Congress's job to pass bills and to appropriate, to fund the government. It's all of their jobs, whether they're Republican or Democrat, whether they're our champion or they're just somebody that we talk to every once in a while. All of them need to know it now. All of them need to hear it now. And that's, we're going to do it as nicely and respectfully. And I don't want this to sound like total doom and gloom. There's still plenty of magic and wonder in agriculture, but we got to get serious, and we got to do those little things that aren't so fun in advocacy, and do them frequent, early and often. We're past the early part, so now we got to go just to very often.
Well, is there anything else we need to know about this farm bill, about what our message is?
Yeah, I know I'm just kind of preaching. Let me get specific real quick of what that timeline. I think you asked me this a couple of ways, and I'm just fired up to charge people up. But Congress will be back in D.C. in September. Our president's going to go part of a very select group of 35 to 40 individuals across commodities and preach this message, advocate this message very directly. We were honored to get asked to participate in that. We're also going to plan some things in October to give our members. Congress will be back home again in October, regardless of what happens in September. So we're going to plan ahead and try to find ways to give you platforms, listener out there, give you that platform to be heard. And then we'll do the best we can do to get a farm bill done and get some ad hoc assistance done by the end of 2024. Because that ad hoc assistance has got to get delivered late 24, early 25, or all these bankers and situations we're talking about will be down the river at that point. So it's going to be a sense of urgency, but we are going to have a very strategic timeline and give you those opportunities. So we'll be back. Check social media, check the e-newsletter, Daily Voice, and those things. We'll engage.
Is there a place people can kind of stay up to date best? I mean, the Daily Voice is a great place to do that. Do we have any information, any articles out there that we can link in the show notes that you know of?
Yeah, we'll have the letter that we signed on to that's still pretty general, but there's more to come. Not really a whole lot we can share right now. I would just encourage people not to glass over it. Don't get farm bill fatigue. Don't think that this is just going to happen if, eventually. Mm-hmm. We got people that can't wait on eventually. So even if you're not in that situation, use your voice for somebody else and engage strong now because it's time to go.
Yeah, don't sit on the sidelines and wait for somebody else to step up on this. I think we're calling everybody out to the field right now for this. So if you want to find the links to sign up for the e-newsletter, the Daily Voice, or maybe get involved in Voter Voice, we'll have all those things linked in our show notes. We have a story in this week's episode of Twyla about the Farm Bill. We'll link that as well in the show notes below. If you want to learn more about anything else that we do here at Louisiana Farm Bureau, it's way more than Farm Bill. Right now, that's going to be a focus, but there's a lot more that we're doing, commodity-based, issues-based. You can find out all about that, and we'll link to that as well in the show notes. For everyone listening, thanks for listening. Please subscribe, like this video wherever you're watching it. Share it with a friend. If you have a farmer down the road that you know is fired up about this issue, let them know that we are too, and share this with them. Maybe they'll get pumped up and ready to sign on to a trip to D.C. or a town hall meeting coming near them soon. So thanks for listening. We'll see you again right here next time on the Louisiana Farm Bureau podcast.